The first ring seemed normal. Phones at the precinct rang all the time. Tips, complaints, calls about kids who hadn't come home yet. But the second ring overlapped the first, half a beat later, and the third followed like an echo, and then the fourth and fifth, and by the sixth the room filled with a syncopated pattern that felt rehearsed, as if the building itself had been wired into a score. Reeves stood frozen with the message still glowing on his phone. "Detective, don't miss your cue at dusk." His eyes moved from the screen to the row of ringing phones as officers scrambled to answer. The cadence of their voices hitched the rhythm higher, as if the choir had extended its performance into the airwaves. The captain barked for silence. The room stilled, but the phones did not. Each desk rang again, staggered, one after the other. An officer picked up, his voice sharp. His face drained. "Deadline," he whispered. Another lifted her receiver. Static. A third. Silence. A fourth. The faint hum of choral voices layered beneath the line, rising and falling like distant hymnals. Reeves didn't need to hear it himself to know. The choir was conducting them. The captain slammed the receiver back onto its cradle, red-faced. "Kill the lines," he ordered. Tex moved to disconnect, but the ringing carried on in memory, bouncing in the ribs of everyone in the room. Reeves felt the weight of his own heartbeat matching the pattern, faster now, a warning. He pocketed the phone, closed his notebook, and knew dusk had already begun. He left the precinct without explaining. Explaining slowed things down, and slow meant loss. The courthouse clock tower showed 5:42, its hands creeping toward an hour the choir had already chosen. Outside, the lawn was empty save for the flutter of paper under a bench. Reeves picked it up with gloved fingers. A sheet of staff paper. 6 notes scrawled in red. Above it, the word, Prelude. He felt the hollow inside his stomach deepen. This was not the main event. This was rehearsal. Reeves mapped the 6 notes against the city grid with the instinct of a man who'd taught himself to see pattern in static. Willow, orchard, maple, those had been streets. What if the notes were blocks, intersections, routes? He sketched quickly in his notebook. The shape came out like a crooked L stretching from downtown to the river. At its end, a warehouse district half abandoned since the recession. He drove fast, lights off, weaving through traffic with the grace of habit. The river smelled of rust and algae. The warehouses leaned against each other in tired rows. His headlights caught broken windows, doorways stuffed with plywood, graffiti tags fading under rain. He parked 3 blocks out and walked in silence, hand grazing the grip of his holster. The warehouse at the corner of 8th and River had a single light glowing faint through a second-story window. Reeves crouched behind a stack of pallets, watching. Movement. A shadow crossing. Not Darren Cole. Too tall, too lean, hair longer. Someone else. A second figure joined him. Then a third. They stood close, their heads bowed like parishioners at a benediction. Reeves' throat went dry. The choir was not metaphor. It was congregation. He crept closer, shoes scuffing dirt, breath shallow. A door creaked open at the alley, and sound spilled out. Not singing but humming, low and resonant, the sound of people testing their voices in unison. He had heard men tune instruments before a concert. This was the same, but with lungs instead of strings. Reeves' radio crackled. He slammed it silent, but the hum faltered inside, and footsteps scraped. The door banged wider. A man in a black coat stepped out, head turning like a compass needle searching. Reeves pressed against the wall, heart clattering. The man lit a cigarette. His profile caught the glow. Sharp cheekbones, hollow eyes, the calm of someone who believed the night belonged to him. He exhaled smoke, flicked the butt, and went back inside. Reeves waited, counted to 60. Then another 60. When silence returned, he slipped through the gap and into the warehouse's dark belly. The air smelled of mildew and paper. Dust motes floated in the thin light from the upstairs window. He crept toward the staircase, ears straining. The hum resumed, soft at first, then swelling into overlapping tones. It was a scale rising and falling, voices weaving together into a texture that set the hair on his arms prickling. Halfway up the stairs, he froze. The wall beside him was lined with photographs, tacked at eye level. Families. Smiling portraits. School pictures. Vacations. Every image marred by a slash of ink across the faces, diagonal like the stroke of a conductor's baton. Reeves scanned them quickly. The Johnsons were there. The Myers. And others he didn't know. Beside each photo, numbers written like catalog entries. Dates. Street names. Times. At the landing, he risked a glance through the crack of the door. The room beyond was a makeshift chapel. Folding chairs arranged in rows. A chalkboard at the front with notes scrawled in white. At least 10 figures sat in the chairs, their faces shadowed, their voices blending into a chord that hovered in the air like smoke. In the center stood a man directing them with small movements of his hands. Not Cole. Someone else. The conductor. Reeves' breath caught. The conductor raised his hand, and the chord resolved into silence. In the hush, Reeves felt the floorboards groan beneath him. One head turned toward the door. Another followed. Then all of them. 10 pairs of eyes lifted as one. Reeves jerked back, but too late. The conductor's voice cut through the dark like a blade. Detective Reeves. The room stilled. Reeves' pulse hammered so loud he thought it might betray him. He reached for his radio, but static fizzed uselessly. He drew his weapon, though the hallway felt too narrow, his hands too slick. The door creaked open wider, pushed from inside. The conductor stepped into the light. Mid-40s. Ordinary in appearance save for the certainty that emanated from him like a current. His eyes were steady, his mouth curved in something not quite a smile. "You've been listening well," he said. "But do you understand the music?" Reeves didn't answer. Silence gave him time. Time was survival. The conductor tilted his head. A choir is not one voice. It is harmony. Pull one thread and the fabric holds. You think catching Cole mattered? He was only one measure in a longer composition. The figures rose from their chairs. Men and women. Some older, some younger. None masked. None hiding. They stepped forward in unison, their shoes striking wood in rhythm. Reeves aimed his gun. Stop. His voice cracked but held. The conductor lifted a hand, and they froze. "No need for violence," he said smoothly. "You're already inside the song. The question is whether you wish to conduct or to be conducted." Reeves' mind raced. Backup. He needed backup. But his phone showed no signal, his radio dead. The warehouse was a tomb. He took a step back toward the stairs. The conductor's eyes glinted. "Dusk is almost over, detective. And when it ends, so does the prelude." From below, a crash echoed, the slam of a door, the shout of voices. Reeves' chest lifted with sudden hope. Backup had come. Officers stormed the lower level, boots pounding. But before Reeves could call out, the choir moved. Not with panic, not with fear. With precision. They melted toward a side door, their footsteps in perfect time, the conductor guiding them like. Notes down a scale. By the time officers burst into the upstairs room, the chairs were empty, the chalkboard wiped clean. Only the photographs on the wall remained, staring with their blackened faces. Reeves holstered his gun, fury rising. He turned to the captain, who had arrived red-faced and sweating. "They were here," Reeves growled. "All of them. The conductor. A full choir." The captain scanned the empty room, his doubt plain. "You sure?" Reeves yanked a photograph from the wall and shoved it into his hands. A family of 4. Ink slash across their faces. At the bottom, a date, 3 days from now. "They're planning another," Reeves said. "We're running out of time." The captain paled. "Where?" Reeves shook his head. The photo held no address. Only numbers scrawled in the corner. 11, 7, 3. Notes? Streets. A code. He stared at them, mind churning. 11, 7, 3. It felt like music. It felt like coordinates. But the meaning slipped away like smoke through fingers. That night, Reeves sat in his car outside the precinct, the photograph on the seat beside him. Rain drummed on the roof. He traced the numbers again and again, whispering them aloud like a prayer. 11, 7, 3, Something tugged at him, something from Cole's notebook, from the notations the linguist had marked as rest, hold, repeat. He snapped upright. A hymn. A numbered hymn. Hymn 11. Verse 7. Line 3. He opened the city hymnal database on his laptop, digitized church bulletins, scanned songbooks. Hymn 11. Guide us through the night. Verse 7. When shadows fall, we follow still. Line 3. Maple sings where willow ends. Reeves' chest constricted. Willow. Maple. The same streets as before. The choir wasn't just mapping neighborhoods. They were scoring them like sheet music. Each hymn a set of instructions, each verse a route, each line a strike. He dialed the task force lead. They're speaking in hymns, he said. I need every church bulletin, every hymnal edition printed in this county in the last 20 years. Now. By dawn, boxes of hymnals filled the conference room. Reeves paged through them until his eyes blurred, marking verses, cross-referencing numbers. A pattern emerged. Each tragedy in the last decade lined up with a hymn, a verse, a line. Fires. Disappearances. Overdoses. None of it random. All of it orchestrated. He circled one entry with shaking hands. Hymn 19. Verse 4. Line 2. The words, at the river bend, the children rest. The river bend. The warehouse district. Children. The family in the photograph. Reeves leapt to his feet. We have 48 hours, he told the room. If we miss it, they'll be gone. They moved fast. Patrols swept the river bend, searching abandoned houses, storage units, storm drains. Every shadow turned suspicious. Every sound felt like breath. But the choir stayed ahead, always one measure beyond reach. On the second night, Reeves returned to his apartment, exhausted. He found the envelope waiting on his table. No stamp, no address. Inside, a single sheet of tracing paper with red ink. Hymn 4. Verse 2. Line 1. The detective joins the song. His knees weakened. For the first time, the score wasn't about a family. It was about him. He stood in the silence of his apartment, the paper trembling in his hands, the night pressing against the windows. Somewhere out there, the choir was singing. And this time, they had written him into the hymn. Reeves has discovered that the choir communicates through coded hymns, predicting and orchestrating tragedies like a composition. But now, the next hymn doesn't target a family, it targets him.